Okay. Actually, the first time I came in contact with it was when I watched The Karate Kid. And I saw that, and I'd done it a little bit before that, but that really stirred up my interest. So I got a tree or two and started. Like you say, bonsai does not mean a certain kind of tree. However, most of the ones you see are junipers, because that's what most people do. But it can be any tree. And I've got several different kinds I can show you later. But it's a very patient kind of hobby, which I think helps me with my faith and my journey, my Christian journey. One thing, it's just like a pet or a baby. You know, they never leave home. Occasionally you'll have one die, but I haven't lost too many over the years, and I've been doing it for about probably 30 years or so, something like that. And you don't lose many, but occasionally you will. But most of them, I mean, one over there I've had it for 30 years. And there are trees out there that are like 100, 200, 300 years old and are still in cultivation, still look just like new, you know. So I think patience and a love for horticulture or plants and bonsai and, you know, all kinds of plants, because anything that applies to a bonsai applies to other plants too. It's just more so. You know, you just have to be more careful about how you water them and how you feed them and all that sort of thing. But it's the same principles, obviously, as anything else that grows in the yard. It has to do with the size, but they go from that tall to, you know, maybe 3 or 4 feet tall. So there's a lot of range in there, and as far as width too. I think you could define it as a tree that is trained to look like a tree that's outside. You know, if you hold one up and just cover the pot with your hand, it should look like a tree sitting out on a mountain somewhere or out on a hillside.
Like a model size of a...
Exactly. And see, that's what started it. In China, they discovered trees that had grown like that in the mountains naturally, you know. And some rich person, I guess, said, I'd like to have one, you know, like that in my palace or my house or whatever. So they dug it up and took it in, you know, and they learned how to take care of it. And that's kind of where it got started. The Chinese moved it into Japan, and they're the ones that really commercialized it, you know, and that's who you always hear is Japan. But it actually came from China. Okay, that's easy. When you're pruning a tree and you take a limb off, you can't put it back. And that's taught me in life that there's a lot of things that you do that you can't take back. So you need to be careful what you do in the first place. You know, patience, as I mentioned, I think God wants us to be patient, because, you know, we're impatient by nature. And we want it right now. We're a right now culture, you know. So I think the patience part of it is God-given too, you know, because He just wants me to be patient. He wants me to learn how to be patient. Yeah. Well, I was raised in the Methodist Church. My salvation was not an explosive kind of thing. It was one where Jesus kind of said, you know, come with me and I think we can do something with you. You know, it was that kind of thing. And it's been a work in progress ever since. And I don't feel like I'm ever going to get through, you know. I'm working toward perfection, you know.
Well, and that sounds like taking care of a bonsai, isn't it? You're never through. You're trying to get it to be the way you want it to be.
Exactly. You're God to your bonsai. And I think to me, it's another part of it that I like is that it takes your mind off everything else. You know, it's like most hobbies that when you get into it, you really get into it, and you don't think about other things and problems and cares of the world. You think about what you have to think about what you're doing. Well, I've learned that in relationships with people, you know, again, you have to be careful about how you treat other people. I mean, Jesus said, love God and love your neighbor. And, you know, that's what we try to do. Certainly not perfect, but we do that. And I think it's the same with bonsai or any hobby. You build a relationship with whatever you're working on, whatever your hobby is. And you have to honor that relationship. You know, like I didn't have time or the basically time to water all my trees. They're all on the fence along here normally. I didn't have time to do that. So I put in a little watering system that is timed so that it waters all my trees over here automatically, and I don't have to worry about it. You know, and so that's a part of the relationship, that I'm taking care of the trees, and it just took that off my mind where I could, you know, do other things. Well, I'm really partial to a place called Brussels Bonsai in Olive Branch, Mississippi. It's the biggest one in the United States, and he has a rendezvous every year that has designers come in, and I've been a couple times, and it's like a one-eyed cat in a fish store. You know, it is wonderful to go down there and see the designers that really know what they're doing. They have classes to teach you how to do it, you know. And like I say, he's got the biggest selection in the world. So just get on your Google, Brussels, Brussell, Brussels Bonsai, and he has a multitude of trees in every price range. And that's what I would do. And he will send some instructions with it, some basic instructions with it. But then I would say get a couple of good books, or a good book on bonsai, because you can learn a whole lot from just reading about what other people have done and how you can do it if you want to. Okay, here are some of my trees. Some are in, I mean, they're in various stages of development, which you can see. This Fukian tea is actually a tropical from China. And it came all the way from China. It's about 8 years old. And right now it needs to be trimmed back and shaped up. But I've let it grow this summer, because the more the outside grows, the bigger the front gets. So, and this is not the time of year to train it. So in the spring is when I'll trim it back and make it look like something. This is just to show that you can do anything. This is a crepe myrtle, double dynamite is what they call it. I just ordered this, and it's supposed to be a brilliant red. And I fixed the trunk so that it has some movement in it. So that's one that's really in progress. This is a cutting off of this one, and I haven't had a lot of success with that, but I'm trying it. And if this one works fairly well, I'll get some more off of this. This is a blue Pacific juniper over here. First time I've tried to do one of these, and you can see from the wire that it's really in training right now, and I might even change some of that depending on. I just cut a limb off one of them out there the other day because I didn't like the way it looked.
Will you explain the wire and the training part?
Yes. If you wire a branch, you can make it do. I mean, if you got enough wire on it, and you can make it do about whatever you want it to do. These are not, really don't have enough wire yet, but you can make it look however you want it to look. When you first look at it, you have to pick what the front is. Pick the front, and then work from there. And when you do that, you start winding the wire around it And this is special wire too, by the way. It's annealed aluminum.
Is that because the coating on the outside so that it?
Well, actually, it's by being annealed, it's softened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's softened. It's not like regular aluminum wire. But after you wire it, you know, you let it stay there, because technically once the sap kind of runs out, which it doesn't completely in evergreens, but once it kind of settles out for the winter and then comes back, the limbs should stay like you had them.
Oh,
You know,
cool.
once you go through a couple phases with the wire on there, then it should stay like it was. This is a Rose of Sharon here. Just take that a little bit further. And what I did here was I planted it in a big thing on a rock, put it down on that rock, and let the roots go around the rock to get to the dirt. And then I built the box, brought the rock and roots and everything out to this so it could get more sunshine and the root structure would improve. Eventually, I'll get a ceramic pot big enough for this, and it will look a lot better, because it will look, you can see a lot more of it, you know, and it'll be a lot neater. There are a few tools that you need. We'll get to that a little bit. You can order bonsai tools, and there are some specialties. It's not just wire cutters and things like that. This one is real important. It's a concave cutter, and what it does is when you cut something off, it cuts in, instead of just cutting it off flat, it cuts into where it's coming from. That kind of wound heals a lot faster than one that's just flat across. So the tools are important. Brussels has those. Just any bonsai place that you go will have these tools. They're a little bit expensive, but they're well worth it. These pruners, you know, you can use a lot of different things, but these are best. You know, it's just for 400 years, you know, they've been using this stuff, and they have figured out what is best to use and what works best. Here is about 4 different sizes of wire. Goes from that little bitty to that big I was using out there. So that part of the wiring. This is real handy, just a little turntable to put it on so that you can kind of look at, see which front you like, you know. And there are ways of cutting things, like this one is a little bit early trim it too, but I'll show you a couple things here. I could just, normal pruning, you just cut it off, you know, but with bonsai, what I want to do is taper. I always want taper. So the way I would do this one would be to take this off and probably put a little wire on that later on, so that this stem is tapering all the way up. And let's see, I saw another one over here too. But that's something that you don't think about too much. But I mean, the more you read and the more you examine things, the better off you are, you know. So, oh, by the way, this tree is a baby off of that Japanese maple that's out there by the driveway. It dropped a bunch of seeds one year, and
Is that the same thing we have at the church?
Yes.
well, it is, but it's a different
Variety.
Oh, okay.
variety. Yeah, it's a different variety. That's a lacier one up there than this one is. Watering, fertilizing, and you really don't need to fertilize it too much either, because again, everything is on a small scale. So everything you do has to be done regularly, but not overdo it, because you don't.
It's very intentional.
Very intense when you and you also trim the roots on these too. Every couple of years you take it out of the pot, trim off the big roots, and leave the little ones, because that's where it gets its nutrients, is through the little ones. So you leave those, and you can trim it off almost right up to the ball on the bottom of the trunk. And that way it'll take up nutrients, take up water. When you water it, what you need to do is water it, and it should just run through it. You know, it shouldn't sit on there at all. It should just run through it, and that shows that your soil is good, and it gets that little drink without being
Too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, without too much water. Right.